This is the story of a woman marked by an image from her childhood. The vibrant scene, whose meaning she would not grasp until much later, broadcasted from the heavens a few years before the start of the Great Migration. On Sundays, children at the orphanage would wait for intercepted messages to beam down from Earth too. Of this Sunday, the child of this story would remember the yellow moon, the scene plastered onto the night sky of a beautiful woman dancing between the stars, translucent, almost ghost-like, but more lively than anyone she had ever seen. Her movements were mesmerizing, but her song pierced through the child's very soul, planting the seeds for a doomed dream. Earth's downfall was not some great and terrible war. It didn't end in nuclear annihilation or societal collapse. It was a slow, steady death, stretched out over decades to the tune of millions leaving in search of prosperity on humanity's first colony in space, a planet called Earth 2. The colony was already established before the girl was born, but only a handful were selected to go up each year, until the Great Migration. By the time she reached her teens, the Earth was a hollow shell. Homes and schools and stores became still, doors like great mouths spewing an aching silence out onto the street. She had no attachment to her home planet, always finding opportunities to perform for the few that remained, in hopes that someone important would be listening. One day, she received an invitation from a rather professional-looking man in the crowd. An audition. They needed creatives on Earth, too. Actors, artists, singers. It was her chance. Many of the children from the orphanage had tried and failed to get to the colony, some attempting to work their way up the social ladder, others signing up as manual laborers, a position that fills up faster than applicants can fill out the required forms. She would be the first, she decided. While many of them were too young to remember the song, she was there every night, every time she sang, channeling that woman among the stars. She could barely see the men who auditioned her, spotlight obscuring even the most basic details of the room. Still, she sang. She sang as if the Star Woman could hear her all the way from Earth. In her excitement, she imagined riding that blinding beam of light all the way up to the colony. She could feel the stars dancing around her, hear the woman echoing through her chest. When she looked back down, the men were gone. There was a silver paper left at her feet. An entertainer's ticket to board the next flight to Earth 2. The stars were dancing in her stomach now. She had done it. It takes 3 days to get from Earth to Earth 2. The trip was uneventful. She was mostly unbothered, left alone in her pod with minimal turbulence. On the 3rd day, she had just downed her motion sickness pills when they pulled her out of her seat and into a white room with a single black screen. A microphone descended from the ceiling. The woman was a bit disoriented. Her questions whispered into the mic, going unanswered. After a moment, the screen flashed with the letters D-O, followed by the sound of a C-sharp scale. She asked what she was supposed to do. A red light flashed. The scale played again. She paused. Then she leaned into the microphone and sang the scale. A green light flashed. The screen changed, now displaying the letters R-E. She went on like this for what must have been hours, singing a variety of scales paired with different letters. She assumed they were having her warm up or testing her abilities. Some of the exercises were insanely difficult, requesting pitches she didn't think her vocal cords could handle. Others were simple sentences that she was required to recite. By the time the last order flashed, her voice was completely shot. 2 men came for her, one with a glass of water, another with a contract. Worn out by the long trip and the strange room, she signed without much of a thought and graciously accepted the water. They escorted her out of the ship, handing her a bag of essentials, an ID, a work permit, a smartphone, and a card with enough credits to last 4 weeks, enough to cover rent. They informed her that she would need to get a job in the meantime, but that she would hear back from them at the end of the month. The woman was in awe of her new home. Clean air, clean water, a great view of the bustling city, the stadium shining in the distance. She hadn't had much luck street performing, as most of the residents preferred AI-generated music. Whole idols fabricated by megacorporations. She was convinced that she had something more for them. All she needed was a bigger stage. Her excitement grew as the month was nearing its end. She couldn't wait for her first real performance. On the first of the new month, she received a silver paper in the mail. Another ticket, this time to a distant stadium for the debut of a new AI idol. She wasn't much into Earth 2's manufactured celebrities, but she jumped at the chance to see the stage in which she would no doubt perform someday. She boarded the tram to the stadium. Being right outside of the stadium was an entirely different experience than viewing it from a distance. She understood why many referred to it as the heart of the city. With each step, the thumping grew louder, whether from the crowd or her own heart, she didn't know for sure. Once through the main gates, she found herself being swept up by the current of bodies, all warm and shaking with excitement. She was lost in a blur of glow sticks and chanting. She had never seen so many people packed so tightly, and the air was getting thin. The lights dimmed. The crowd fell silent. She was finally able to focus her eyes to the empty stage. She blinked, and the stage was no longer empty. A woman, impossibly graceful, moving as if gravity had no hold on her, ghost-like, but more lively than anyone she'd ever seen. No, that was wrong. She had seen this woman, all those years ago. But how was this possible? Her eyes stung with nostalgia. She couldn't wrap her mind around how she was here, but she felt like the luckiest woman in either world to be in attendance at the concert that spurred her to become a singer. She stretched her arms to the sky, as if asking the woman to pluck her from the crowd so they could dance among the stars together. Then the ghost woman opened her mouth. She was singing. She was singing, but it wasn't with her own voice. It was her. The girl who traveled across the stars to perform for the people of Earth 2 had signed her voice away to an AI. The same AI who somehow impossibly inspired her all those years ago. She could no longer hear the crowd chanting all around her, nor the thumping electronic beat. She heard her heart and her stolen voice. She could do nothing but stare as the stars twirled around her AI idol. Her body was rigid, pushed and pulled by the momentum of the uncontrollable crowd. She tried to move, to flee, but her legs were locked in place. She couldn't catch her breath. She collapsed to the floor.